The title of my project is an analysis of Airbnb rentals in the Dublin area, bearing in mind the new regulations that are going to limit home sharing platforms to be introduced in Dublin on the 1st of June 2019. So my problem stems from October 21st, 2018, when the Housing Minister announced that new regulations are going to limit home sharing platforms such as Airbnb. The regulations are going to apply to Dublin because it is a defined rent pressure zone. So the rules in short are that if you are letting out a second property on Airbnb, you're not allowed to do so anymore. You will have to get planning permission if you want to continue. If you are renting out your principal primary residence, which is your own home, you can only do so for up to 14 days at a time, and there's a cap of 90 days in a year. And again, if you want to go over 90 days, you have to get planning permission and you have to register with your local authority to do so. If you are letting out bedrooms in your house, similar to a B&B, you can continue doing that and you don't need to get planning permission. You can do it without restriction 365 days of the year. So my two research questions are going to focus in on those people who have listings for an entire home or an apartment. And what I'm going to look at is what percentage of current listings on Airbnb will be affected by the new regulations, and which locations will these regulations have the greatest impact. And then I'm going to look at those people who have listed just a single listing, and we're going to see potentially how many existing listings could be affected using the 90-day rule to be introduced. So in terms of data collection, I downloaded data from InsideAirbnb.com for the Dublin region. It was downloaded as a CSV file called listings. There are a few others there that have more detailed analysis if we wish to do so. I converted it to an Excel workbook and I analysed it. This file was last updated on the 18th of November 2018 and I downloaded it on the 8th of December 2018. So in terms of data cleaning, the data set that I downloaded had 9,530 listings. There are 16 categories and they're listed down below. So you have your host name, the host ID, the neighbourhood it's in, and these have been cleaned into 4 categories. So you've done Leary Rathdown, South Dublin, Dublin City, and you had Fingal. There is GPS coordinates, there's the room types, the price per night, the minimum number of nights you had to book. If you want to do some analysis of reviews, that was also available. And you had the calculated host listing count, which was basically the number of listings per host advertised on Airbnb. And then you had the availability out of 365 days per year. So when I was looking through my data using search and filter from Excel, I discovered that 3,173 listings had 0 availability out of 365. So because they weren't available, I felt they weren't relevant to my work. So I removed them from the analysis. This left me with 6,357 listings with availability in the Dublin region. I deleted a couple of the columns that weren't relevant, such as latitude, longitude, the host names, and the name, which is the big description, and the headline as would appear on Airbnb, as I felt they weren't relevant to the project. So in terms of my data, the majority of it was either numerical discrete or categorical, with the prices being continuous. The neighbourhood data was split up as already explained. Room type was split up as an entire flat or apartment, a shared room, or a private room. And calculated host listings count was numerical discrete as just a fixed number, and the availability out of 365 was also numerical discrete. So my initial data analysis led me to look at the listings by location. So I just did an Excel countif, and we just had a look and saw that 77% of the listings are in Dublin City, with the lowest proportion being in South Dublin. And there's 4,882 listings on Airbnb with availability in Dublin City. Moving on then, I decided we would look at the listing types by their location. And again, you can see that the majority again is in Dublin City, but there is 2,924 entire homes or apartments available in Dublin City. So these potentially are the ones that we're going to be looking at, alongside the 274 Dún Laoghaire Rathdown and Fingal and South Dublin slightly less. Then I looked at the price, so I'd done a pivot table for this and then made a pivot chart. So we looked at the prices by the type of accommodation and again by the location. So we can see that entire homes and apartments are very similar in price in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown and Dublin City, slightly less in Fingal, and the cheapest is in South Dublin. Surprisingly, shared rooms was most expensive in South Dublin, but there is only 2 of them available, as you can see on the previous slide, so that could be an explanation for that. Then I moved on to look at my 2 research questions in better detail. So the first thing I found is that of the total amount of listings with availability in Dublin, 48% of them are held by a host who has 1 listing only on the site. That is 3,035 listings. There's 52% of the listings are held by hosts with more than 1 listing on Airbnb. So I then went into a bit more detail, and I had a look at search and filter just to see out of interest, and I noticed that one host had 55 different listings on Airbnb. There was 53 of them with availability, and all of them are entire homes or apartments. Others that had big numbers, there was one person with 44 listings, there was another with 29 listings, and another with 27 listings. And this is a brief chart just to show the distribution of the listings. Also important to note, for example, that we have one up here at the very end, which is 55 listings, but actually only 33 with availability. So sometimes they won't always divide in evenly because I've removed the accommodation which has 0 listings. Then I looked at the room type by these hosts with multiple listings, and I can see then obviously that there are 1,809 entire homes or apartments advertised on Airbnb by hosts who have more than 1 listing up on the website. In terms of private rooms, 1,431, shared rooms there's 82. Just to look at the locations, we can see that of all of these types of accommodation, there's 1,650 entire homes and apartments in Dublin City. So potentially we're up to 1,650 may have to be removed from Dublin City. So I think that would be the worst affected area if the regulations are to take effect, if these are all people who are listing out a second home. So we can also say then potentially, looking at all of the areas, up to 1,809 entire homes or apartments may have to be removed completely from Airbnb in order for landlords to comply with the new regulations, and the majority of these are found in Dublin City. In terms of looking at my second research question, it is the 90-day rule. So I took a look at all the listings that are available for more than 90 days or less than 90 days, and this came in at 50-50 roughly. So we then decided to be a bit more specific, and I decided to look at hosts who have 1 listing only, because these are going to be restricted under the 90-day rule. And I saw then that 46% of hosts have 1 listing where they exceed 90 days, whereas 54% who have 1 listing only are less than or equal to 90 days. So in terms of detail, there's 1,635 entire homes or apartments listed that are held by hosts with 1 listing that will only be available for a maximum of 90 days. Currently, 751 of these listings are available for more than 90 days. The remaining 884 listings are available for less than or equal to 90 days. So to conclude, based on my analysis, there are 2,560 listings featuring entire homes or apartments that will need to be either removed or altered in order for them to be compliant when the new regulations take force. And this equates to about 40% of the total listings analysed with availability in the Dublin region. In terms of limitations, there are a few. It's not possible to say if the private rooms are being operated by a host and their principal primary residence. We also can't say that the entire homes or apartments that are listed by a single host are actually the host's principal primary residence. So we can only say that up to 40% of the listings can be affected by these new regulations. In terms of future work, things that I would like to do is to regularly visit InsideAirbnb.com over the next couple of months and download each dataset as it's updated to monitor changes and see what's going to happen before and after the implementation of the rules. I'd also like to do a bit of analysis of other cities that have introduced similar regulations, such as Vancouver, Berlin and Barcelona as well.